morning, and thanks, Chiz. That's a really great way to start off this session. Our panel, we're going to talk a little about enterprise architecture specifically. We'll go through a little bit of the overview for each of us, and then we'll have a question and answer period. A lot of the challenges we're facing to enterprise architecture as a practice, kind of sitting above and outside of the individual delivery teams, right? IT organizations press clearly for velocity of innovation and agility, things we just talked about, harnessing digital transformation through mobile, social, cloud, et cetera. Some groups are getting it really well, some are still struggling at it. The whole DevOps automation paradigm where, releases, we saw some staggering numbers from years ago that are happening in companies that used to be used to doing maybe a quarterly or semi-annual release. Right now we have this new pressure. Open source used to be an interesting lab experiment. Now it's part of mission-critical applications, and these accelerated delivery models are no longer innovative or interesting. They're part of the fabric the organizations are driving to. And what that drives us to is, what does enterprise architecture as a practice or a function start to look like in this new model and in this new day? And really looking at a couple of things. One is, are we focused on value outcomes as opposed to activity outcomes, right? So the idea of the annual roadmap refresh, and we talk about, well, we didn't get this done this year either, so we just kind of keep kiting roadmaps and those, as Jez mentioned, those elusive changes we're trying to implement. Removing as many roadblocks as we can. Are we increasing or decreasing the velocity organization? But we still, to the regulatory comments earlier, are we still managing the risks that we're responsible for? Are we driving through and instituting low-friction enterprise architecture as a practice, where we're leading through more of an enablement than a heavy-handed governance and more facilitation? And then finally, some organizations are applying lean principles to their EA practice themselves, right? How are we able to do a value stream map, really kind of thin out the things that we don't need to be doing that aren't adding value to the company at large, and really accelerating and freeing up as much of that architecture practice? So those are some of the key things we're thinking about or rethinking about in terms of enterprise architecture practice.
In preparation for this talk, I kind of reminded myself of an interview with Steve Jobs from back of 1990, where he concluded that the computer is a bicycle for the human mind. And I'd like to think of enterprise architects and the role of enterprise architects as the bicycle for the modern enterprise, which through their experience and their foresight, they have the opportunity to drive efficiencies for the business and also drive the speed of innovation within the development organizations. To be able to do that with alignment between business and technology, I believe that enterprise architects have the key role for doing that. And what I'm presenting here is sort of an example, a real-life example from Intuit that we believe we're attacking and we're still in the journey of. It starts with an alignment triangle that typically translates our vision and goals into priorities and execution, but then with strong partnership with business leaders, enterprise architects have been able to infuse some key efficiency enablers within the vision and goals. For example, things like establishing the word of platform and ecosystem and rapid experimentation in the vision and the key organizational goals. We're also striving for a very sort of innovative organization, one where employees have the best place to work in, and that is considered to be sort of a force multiplier for developer productivity, the same way that the platform ability for our vision is a force multiplier for business growth. We have also jointly developed a very strong technology strategy, which allows our teams to balance between delivering features for the business together with things like hygiene, security, refresh for technology, etc. We're also using a reference architecture together with a couple of principles for buy versus build or core versus context as a way for us to actually help the teams prioritize their deliverables between different organizations and lean on each other such that they don't have to all build it by themselves. And last but not least, we're jointly developing a metrics infrastructure and framework which allows us to actually in real time drive more of those efficiency gains by correlating outputs like revenue and number of subscribers back to developer productivity, uptime, availability, etc. And so in conclusion, I'd like to think that we've actually been on a good journey and we are definitely not done, but it's allowing us to be a trusted partner one that becomes the bicycle for the business and certainly helps leading the organization through architecture as opposed to the other way around.
And really the theme of the first presentation and what we've heard so far is about, we call it agility, velocity, I call it speed. It's the need for speed. Organizations, the marketplace is changing so rapidly that we have to stay in touch of it, in front of it in order to be competitive. And the need for speed is the moniker for our enterprise architecture organization at Cardinal Health. That is our mandate from our CIO, that's our mandate from our CEO, and as well as the entire C-suite. So what's a way by which you achieve that speed? You certainly can't do it by thinking about enterprise architecture, right, as something that happens on the side as we may have used to do in the past. It has to be tied in an integral way to the organization, to the way that the organization works, to the business. And the business can manifest itself in a lot of ways. And the way that you can tie that is in a lot of different ways. And I think kind of the best way to describe that is through a couple of examples. Now, all of them from Cardinal Health, so it's sporadic throughout my career. I've seen this be very effective. And one example is a company that was under tremendous pressure, going out of business pressure, a multi-billion-dollar company, formerly Fortune 100 company, that was headed swiftly out of business if it didn't change the way that it operated in a significant way. And enterprise architecture was key to that change. And the way that happened was by the enterprise architecture team sitting on several of the business committees where they were going through planning and strategy to understand, again, in a very integral way, exactly what the business was trying to drive, and then coming up with a future state vision of where we wanted to be in a very rapid fashion based upon that interaction, based upon really working jointly with the business team to understand where we wanted to drive the organization. And unbeknownst to the company and the team, they had to pull the trigger on their 3-year plan in about 18 months. And because the architecture was already developed and conceived of how it would fit together, it allowed that process to happen that would have normally taken 3 to 5 years, quite frankly, to happen in 18 months, to allow them to rapidly replatform and redeploy an entirely new technology platform based upon where they were driving the business. So that's the example number one where it was a critical need, and enterprise architecture was out in front and able to help drive the company toward that outcome. Another one that is from Cardinal Health is that over a 5-year process, enterprise architecture through kind of the top of the stack, the business part of the architecture stack, began to engage with the business team to help on our pharmaceutical side of our business, to help them to understand really where the gaps, where the challenges were based upon market analysis that the enterprise architecture team had done, and also as well as where the company was trying to drive from a strategic perspective. It took a number of years, but eventually the business started to listen and say, hey, you guys are saying something right. We need to change some significant things. And the outcome of that is a program that's underway now, which is an entirely new platform for our pharmaceutical business that has been entirely led in the early phases by the enterprise architecture team driving toward that end state. So those are just two examples where, because of the integration with the business, and that can be through various different means, that the architecture has really been able to help drive the outcome in a very valuable, visible way for the company.
When we talk about enterprise architecture, there are a lot of things that we always assume as the beginning point, right? They're technology experts, and they do things that is more company-wide, and they can bring in certain competencies, they can speed things. But I want to really talk about certain things that are really, some of these have been sacred cows in the enterprise architecture area. Is like, you are this group, you are supposed to do certain structural things, and you're not supposed to do certain things, and there is a distance between them. So my job today at Assurant is really fundamentally drive that change, and I have done this in Fortune 100 companies and even outside of it. Right, so I see this as 3 big pieces of transformation, right? So, and I'm not going to touch so much into the technology aspect of it, we're all fairly aware of those pieces. It's very continuing to the theme here, right? So one of the big things we have to do is, especially in a technology product organization like ourselves, is force ourselves to be aligned directly with the product organization. It's not intuitive for organizations to think of themselves as aligned to product, and that's not just meaning to say have a partner with them or just talk to them. Really are working on their product roadmaps, working on building product models and building capabilities that are derived out of these models. So when you actually look at it from an EA perspective, business architecture takes a tremendous priority over anything else. Now, we can call it something else, but business truly appreciate when you start having discussions in terms of product model, product has capabilities, capabilities have features, and then enabler technologies that support those features. So, and then the whole thing has to be KPI driven. Everything that the business does is measured. And we are really not talking about IT metrics here. We're really talking about what generates value, how can I go to market, what's my opportunity cost for it, and we really have to marry to that. And enterprise architects are expected to partner with product organization to build those pieces, right? The second part, second avenue that we want to force and work towards is how do I actually build a hands-on expert organization? Is this folks sitting somewhere outside of it and actually telling somebody else to do it is never going to work. So we've been pushing folks on enterprise architects to be part of the organizations, drive change, be the catalyst for change, and be the transformation agents for it. It's purely because the experience and the expanse they come into the organization that people automatically develop respect when you actually talk about these things, but it cannot be done from far away. So we have cross-organizational competencies that these folks bring in that they can help drive this thing. And the biggest thing is be guide and mentor, live among the delivery teams, live what they do, look at them and improve on what they do and try to make sure you add value to every conversation you have. And then the last one is the term called continuous architecture that's becoming prevalent right now, but we want to really start shaping this to extend Jez's comments earlier, right? Time to market drives behavior. It used to be the case that bottom line used to be the big deal for enterprise architects. You're much more efficient, you're much more cost conscious, and you're much more secure. Secure and all these things are absolutely important today, but focus is now shifted tremendously to top line, which is time to market. Customers are driving how we behave. Digital technologies are driving how we react. And it's very important that time to market drive our behaviors. So the idea is to make small bets, work towards get started today. You know enough to get started today. You don't have to really wait for that eventual goal to happen. And today's technologies, whether you look at PaaS environments or microservices-based environments or API management, allow you to fail fast. That's a big structural change in how we behave. People used to say there used to be a 2-month period where I will build this solution and it'll last me forever and stuff. That's all completely changed now. It's like, let's go now and we'll adapt after a few months. So those are the three main things that I wanted to talk about when we talk about enterprise architecture. And these are all reality-based, driving things on the ground, right?